Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Office Add-ins community call. I am David Chesnut, your host for this call. Let's take a look at the agenda for today's call. Joining us is Yahweh Zhu, who's going to be sharing a proposal around the Open XML pattern. Also, I'm excited to have a special guest today, Thomas Barnacle, who is a senior principal architect with deep knowledge of Office Open XML, and he's going to be sharing a couple of libraries that he put together, showing how you do Linq to XML in Office add-ins. So that's very cool. Also joining us today is Linda Cannon, who's going to give an update on community engagement, and Juan Balmari, who has some updates to share around Outlook APIs. If you have any questions as we go along, please type them into the chat, and we'll answer those in the chat as we go along. This call is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel 24 hours after the call. And we also post a blog summary of the call afterwards, usually about a week out. And if there's any questions we weren't able to get to today, you'll find them answered in that blog. So keep an eye out for that. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started with Yahweh.
Hi, thank you, David. And hey, everyone. I'm Yahweh Zhu. I'm the product manager of the Excel add-ins, and I'm here today to propose this new, not very new, this pattern is the proposal of use opening Excel. This pattern is first released in back 2020, so it's like two years ago. But we found out that some partners has already used it and gains very rapid usage growth. So here I am to propose it again. I want more partners to use it as well. So here we are. In our traditional way, if a user wants to use an Excel add-in, at first they have to find and open the Office store, search add-ins, and install it. Switch the ribbon, launch the add-in, then they can use it. But in this Open Excel pattern, the user starts with your own system. The user click one button like Open Excel or export the data from the system to Excel. Boom, they have already, they can download the Excel file, or they can simply open the Excel online. And then the add-ins can be installed and launched automatically in the same time. The user can use it simply. And this pattern can save a lot of user interaction with our system and with our not that very good discoverability. And this is the pattern that I want to propose. How can I play this video? This is a recording that I recorded as a Jira user, because Jira is the first one to use this pattern in their system. The user can click one button from the Jira system, and they can choose whether to open it in the Excel desktop client or in the Excel online. If they choose Excel desktop, Jira will generate a local file and then download it. If the user opens the Excel file with the Excel client, the Jira add-in will be automatically installed and launched. And you can see here the filter and the condition is totally the same as the user choose in the Jira system. And this is very convenient for the user to use it as a smooth workflow. And also, this kind of pattern works for the Excel Online. And you can click the button and choose to open the file and open the data in Excel Online. The add-in will also be installed and launched automatically as well. Yeah, the video seems to be a little bit lag here, but I hope you can see what I'm trying to propose here. And this pattern has very clear benefits and values for both users and developer. For the users, it provides a much better experience because users don't have to search and find the store and search for the add-ins and install it before they can use it. And to partners, it means better funnel, because they can install and launch it automatically. No user frictions. It means better link. When user export the data from the system to the Excel, you can also connect the data link between the Excel and the system at the same time. And it also means better user awareness. For example, when user export the data to Excel and this file can be modified by the user themselves, they can also share the file to the other colleagues. When the other user open the file, the add-ins will be also launched and installed and launched as well. All of that adds up to be a better usage. I think that is as in something means for you and a lot of means for us. But this pattern is not suitable for all of our partners. It has some conditions. And the first one is user can export the data from your system to Excel. That means your system has to be based on some data, like ERP, like CRM, like financial backend, like a BI system, like education system. And as well, this export data from your system to Excel is a very common activity for your users. Then this add-in can provide the clear value too. Otherwise, the user might only export data once a year. This add-in might not be that useful as well. And the second one is your JS add-in in Excel is integrated with your service and in Excel. For example, your add-ins is built for the connection between your system and Excel. They can refresh the data. They can pull the data instantly or nothing. And also, you can use your add-ins to do more actions, such as data analysis, data visualization, and also you can write the data back to your system with your add-ins if you like. And you can use your imagination because the user already has the data in the Excel. So you can imagine how you can use your add-ins to help the users to modify, to analyze the data better. And you can use your imagination here. And how to use it, we provide this PNP sample code in this link. I think we can share the deck after this meeting, so you can check out document online. And here's two main problems that you might run into, because some of the tenant might disable the user's store. So the user cannot choose which add-ins they can install from the store because the tenant disabled it. So you can, in this situation, you can use this central deployment functionality. You can talk to the admin. So, hey, you disable the store. The user cannot use the add-ins. So you can deploy the add-ins to all the tenant users. So when you download this file from the system, you export data from the system, the add-ins has been already deployed on the user's client. So they will only need to launch it, and that works fine as well. And if your add-ins use something like custom function, like you want to stay the consistent connection with the system and Excel, you can use this shared on runtime. When you enable this functionality, when user close the task pane, your add-ins will be also running in the background. So these two situations is something that we like to share the common situation that the developer might run into. And that's it. Due to the limitation of time, so we might not be able to run the QA online. So this is the feedback forms, and you can scan the QR code here and leave the questions. I will try to contact you after this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Yahweh. That's really cool to see. I see there's a lot of interest in the chat. So if you get a chance, maybe take a look at the chat and make sure you've answered questions there. Thanks. Let's head over to Thomas. Thomas, you want to take over presentation?
Yep. I'll share my screen now. So hi, everybody. My name is Thomas Barnacle. I'm a senior principal architect with Analog Devices since August 1st, so my second week. Just to note quickly my email address if you wanted to reach me on my kind of side business address, which I'm also using for open source development. A few words about myself quickly. As I said, I'm since August 22, I'm a senior principal architect with Analog Devices. In parallel, I'm the developer of a tool called Documate, used for high-performance Word document automation and processing. My main activities in the past 20-odd years were in management consulting and outsourcing sales. However, I've always been a software developer, and in the recent years, since 2014, something, I've actively contributed to open source projects, specifically to the Open XML SDK and the Open XML Power Tools, for example, and some others not related to Open XML. So this is also the background of today's talk. Yeah. Specifically for today, what I've done is, in support of Office.js Add-ins, I've developed some TypeScript libraries for dealing with Open XML markup in Office add-ins in TypeScript. Yeah, so one library would be the Open XML Dev /Linq to XML library, which is basically Linq to XML that you might know from .NET for TypeScript. Yeah, and then for dealing with Open XML markup, you might know all of the namespaces that you have, like the W, the P, and so forth. So those names are all defined in this library. Yeah, all of them hosted in npm.js.org. And finally, to demonstrate what those libraries can do, I've also open sourced a Linq add-in projects on GitHub. I'll give you the links later. They're all in the Open XML Dev organization on GitHub. And this basically is what I'm showing today, which basically demonstrates how to use those other libraries. To explain a bit the background, I'm using some slides that I've also shared already in the Dev Days Redmond 2021 to provide some context. Yeah. So let's look at this quick example of a Word document snippet on the left, which came with tons of content controls and nested content controls specifically. And that was very hard to work with in an outsourcing deal context. Yeah? And so the desire was to transform the documents that came in this form into a cleaner form that did not have those content controls, which you can see here by those markup icons here. Yeah? And so the transformation of this document from the left form into the right form was the task. And if you look at that task in Open XML markup, what you see on the left is basically a very simplified excerpt of the markup from the left document. And what you would see is the SDT, so structured document tags or content controls, which basically always have a WSDT and then a WSDT content child, and then it can have nested content, in this case, a paragraph, and again, content control, with again, a nested content control, and ultimately some revision markup, so an inserted, deleted content, in this case, a run, which basically was a closing square bracket, right? And all of this was to show a closing square bracket that was once inserted and then deleted. Yeah. The cleaned up markup, which obviously requires some recursion to do, looks like the markup on the right. Yeah. So this only has the paragraph with the inserted run, the deleted run, or the deletion marker, and then the actual run with the deleted text of the square bracket. Yeah. So this was basically the task, to turn the left markup into the right markup. To transform Open XML markup, or generally any XML markup, the most natural thing to do, if you understand a little bit about the technology, would be the XSLT, so the XML style sheet language transformations. And in such transformations, which are expressed in XML themselves, you define templates. Yeah, for example, one at the top here, matching WSDT elements, and then applying a certain template to process that. In this case, throwing away the SDT and the SDT content and only looking at the node, but applying basically the same templates again on the node. And if something wasn't an SDT, then a so-called identity transformation would be applied, which simply copies the thing on the level over to the new document and then runs those templates again. So a recursive functional transformation of the Open XML document, if you will. The same thing in C#, yeah, on the .NET platform looks like the code on the right. Yeah, so there's a clear correspondence between those first boxes here. Yeah, so for example, if you have a node that is to be transformed, and that node is an element, an X element, the name of which is w.sdt, so in text the w:/sdt, then you transform it by taking the element, take its WSDT content, yeah, the nodes of the content, and then simply transforming those nodes by using the same transformation function. And the thing at the bottom is nothing else than the identity transformation, which basically takes the element, yeah, creates a new one, yeah, with the same name, the same attributes, and a set of nodes that are transformed by the exact same function. So this is why this is called a pure functional recursive transformation. Yeah, so this is what you can do in C# very easily. And the good news now is that you can do pretty much the same thing. Yeah, so with just the language specific changes of uppercasing versus lowercasing, for example, of certain property names or function names and so forth. So you can do the exact same thing now in TypeScript, yeah, on the client side in an Office.js add-in. What is used for this purpose would be the libraries that are already mentioned. Yeah, so the Linq to XML. Yeah, so you would see the library in GitHub and the npm.js package. And then the Linq to Open XML or OO.xml package, yeah, again with hosted in the Office in the Open XML Dev organization, and the same on the npm.js. And then lastly, the Linq to XML sample add-in that shows how this is used and which I'm going to demo next. To understand when to use this, I mean, this is a very good approach for everybody having previous experience with Open XML. And ideally also the C# way of using the Linq to XML package and the namespaces in Open XML. And I mean, ideally also if you have experience wherever the Office.js API does not provide adequate support for the use case that you're looking at. Yeah, I'm going to demonstrate a use case for which at least I did not see readily how this would be done in the Office.js API, which does not say that there is no way. Yeah, and I'd be interested to see if anybody knows how to do this, whether there is a way to do this. So let's look at a demo right now. Let me show you first what this looks like in Word. I have provided a very simple Word document that has some formatted text, body text and text in a table. The first one is a heading 1 paragraph that comes as standard in the normal .x, and I've just bolded this paragraph. And the second one is a heading 2, which I simply italicized. Yeah? And then there's formatted text of the exact same kind. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. In this case, the first quick is formatted using the intense emphasis character style. The second bold word is formatted using the strong character style. Everything else here on the right is formatted using direct formatting. So for example, just turning the font red, applying a highlight, trying to then make this look like the text on the left by applying italicizing and coloring the font. And the dog is simply a direct bold, yeah, not the character style. The purpose of the add-in is to basically remove all direct formatting while retaining all paragraph styles or character styles. And so if we look at the first one, for example, if I am in the paragraph, or if I've marked the paragraph as a whole, this will basically transform this single paragraph. So if I click here, it will retain the heading 1 paragraph style and simply remove the bolding. The same here, the heading 2 initially italicized. If I click this, it will simply remove the italic formatting, but keep the style. Yeah, oops. In this case here, let me undo this so I can do this again. In this case here, if I run this, it will retain the first formattings, which are character styles, but throw away everything else. And I can also do this by marking the whole document, for example, and running, and you see how quick this goes, right? So this is really fast on the Mac and on the Windows Word host. However, and I can't go into too much detail, on the Office Online host, the web host, this is significantly slower and will, at least when I tried this last, show some user interface or some dialogue saying that something needs to be inserted. So this is basically what this does. One word of caution is that if I remove this, if this is done in a table, for reasons that might possibly be a bug in Microsoft Word, I don't know, the tool, at least as it's written, will not transform this text because, for example, it will tell you that the selected range is invalid. The reason is that if you select text within a table, for example, also two cells or, I don't know, a row or a column, then you cannot even take the Open XML and reinsert the exact same Open XML into the same range. That will mess up the document. And so basically I'm careful and don't even try to transform this. Yeah, it might work if you treat it, especially if you simply select a single cell, that works. If you wanted to transform a table, you would have to take the table and at least the following paragraph. If I do this, that can be done. Okay, so now jumping into the code. The first class that is hit when you launch the add-in is the app component, yeah, which returns some markup here, including the default button with the on-click handler click, which is this handler at the top. That handler basically uses the word run call to run some code in the word context. And this key line is this one here. It is composed of two functions, namely the transform selection, which acts like kind of a driver, which makes sure that, for example, the correct content is selected. You must always select the full paragraphs. Otherwise, you will throw away paragraph formatting. And then the second thing is the remove direct formatting, which is the actual transformation function that performs the transformation, which I will show in a second step. So looking at the transform selection first, if we go into that function, this is a function that takes a transformation function and the word request context. It first gets the selection, yeah, making sure that full paragraphs are selected, tests whether the selection is valid by making sure that this is not a table that is selected. And if it's not valid, returns false and doesn't even try to transform. If it is valid, it calls the transform method that is passed to this function on the selection that was basically determined. And this means the selection is an object here at the top. So this means, and it assumes that the document element here is basically changed. And then ultimately it takes the document key, basically the content, and inserts that back into the document. Yeah. So this is the rough order of events here. And the transformation is the key point that I'm going to look next. So this transformation, yeah, this first function is the one that has the desired signature. So it takes a selection object. In this case, simply takes the document property of this selection, calls the next method, which is the actual pure functional transformation. And once it has turned the document into a transformed document, it basically replaces that document with the transformed document. And that is then the basis for doing the next step in the driver, if you will. Looking at the pure functional transformation, this is a normal recursive function. Yeah? So you have a function that typically takes a node, an X node in this case, and this is exactly the same thing that you would have in C#. And it returns an X node or null. Null in case when you want to ignore an element, yeah? filter it out. It basically always ignores anything that is not an X element, because like an X text, for example, that will be returned directly. Otherwise, if this is an element, it then looks at whether the element is a paragraph properties element, like a WPPR. If so, it calls the paragraph properties transformation, basically transforms the WPPR and all its child elements. If it is a WRPR element, it performs a run properties transformation. So all the character formatting, for example, will be dealt with. And if those elements are different, it will basically do the identity transformation and return, as I've shown you on the slide. It will return a new element, yeah, with the same name, the same attributes, and it will transform the nodes using the exact same remove direct formatting transformation method. Yeah, so that's the pure functional character here. It does not change or does not have any side effects, and it is recursive. Yeah. Looking at those paragraph properties and run properties transformations, we look at whether the element that we have is a WPPR. If so, we transform the elements of the PPR by, again, selecting the paragraph properties transformation. Yeah, so also a recursive way. We retain everything that is not null, so basically not ignored, and turn this into an array. This is exactly how you would do this in C#. No difference, really. And then if we find that we have some elements, we create a new X element, yeah, and called PPR with the retained elements as its children. Otherwise, we ignore the PPR entirely and return a null. And that will then basically be treated with up top, right? The PPR can also have an RPR again, so the same run properties transformation applies. And then for any child element, for example, if it's a P style, so the paragraph style, it will be retained. And we also need to retain the numbering properties, so the WNumPR. So in this case, we simply return the element, and otherwise we simply ignore everything else. So if we return null, like for bold, italics, some font properties that we've set, yeah, all of this will be ignored and thrown away. Lastly, the run properties transformation, if you look at this quickly, same pattern as above. Yeah? So we look at the RPR, we take the retained elements, and either create a new RPR with just the retained elements, everything else thrown away, or we also return null, meaning the whole RPR can be ignored because everything was direct formatting. The only thing that we retain here by saying if element name equals r style, so that's the run style, we return that. Otherwise, everything else is simply ignored. And so this is pretty much it. Yeah, so I think this is nice and sweet and very clean. does not require any specific knowledge of the Office.js API, could generally be an approach that works and is very fast on at least the Word host on Windows and Mac. I was told that the team is working on improving the performance on Office Online. Of course, you can always use the Office.js API if it supports your use case. Yeah, and certainly if it supports the use case, you have no previous experience with Linq to XML or the Open XML markup, which is super complicated, the markup itself, yeah, then it's always best to use the Office.js API. Yeah, but for the Open XML developer, that might be a good approach for certain use cases. With that, back to you, David.
All right, thank you, Thomas. That was a great demo. It's exciting to see like how if you already have C# knowledge in this space, how it translates so well to the TypeScript side. Like it's just almost the same. Very cool. All right. So Linda.
Well, first, let me introduce myself. I'm Linda, and I work with David and Juan. I'm in the Office Developer Platform, Portals and Programs team. We're the team that brings you the Microsoft 365 Developer Program, and we also bring you all the wonderful websites that are the developer centers for all the various products in Office. What I wanted to talk to you about today is just give you a little brief community update. So this is just a little recap of kind of where we're at. As you know, for Office developers, we do not have paid support unless you're a big enterprise company and can afford that sort of thing. So what we've done is taken all the different areas where our developers reach out to for free support for the different types of contacts, such as, you know, I have this great idea, which is what we're going to talk about today, or I found a bug, or how do I do this, or where's the documentation, something's missing. We have all these different contact types. And as a result, we have multiple channels that our PMs on our team volunteer. We have a rotation every week, one of us, including Dave and me and Juan and all the other PMs, triage these places. What I want to talk about today is some upcoming changes in the purple area, which is what happens when an Office add-ins developer has an idea or has a need for a new API or a feature improvement in the user interface or whatnot. So I'll demo that now. The main problem is, as you know, user voice retired last year kind of suddenly, and we didn't have a place to send people for their ideas. So we created a temporary solution, which I'll share with you right now. We went to tech communities where they had forums, and we created the Microsoft 365 Developer Platform ideas. We migrated all of our ideas from user voice over here, and we started sending people here to submit an idea. This was always intended to be an interim solution while we were waiting for Microsoft to develop the feedback portal, which I'll get to momentarily. So as you can see, this is a place to track ideas and add upvotes. We have a lot of ideas. This one has 144 votes on down here, but it's really hard for us to triage. Like I mentioned, this is a volunteer thing for all of our PMs, and they spend a lot of the time in GitHub and don't always get out to these more remote places, I should say. It's also difficult because if we wanted to track the Office add-ins development suggestions, it does change for us, but we have no idea how many. For some reason, this doesn't change. We also can't sort by the tags. So if it was a Word add-in suggestion, so it's really hard for the volunteers on the feedback rotation to dive in and get to this. So as a result, you could see we're not doing the best job of triaging this and getting to it. We still have, this has been about a year, and we have 660 new items. So that is obviously a failure on our part for not being responsive enough to your ideas. I'm not saying we don't go out here and look at it. What I'm saying is it doesn't have a process to filter into our actual workflow. So we were diligently waiting for the new feedback portal to come out, which isn't preview, but it is released. This comes with its own set of problems for us. The main one being that it is completely product-centric, doesn't have any area whatsoever for developer ideas. There are a few exceptions. SharePoint is in here. And if you go to their categories, you can see that they have development and customization as an option. Another area that's in here, because it's product level, you'll see Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, but you won't see Office. Another area is Graph. Graph has has a lot of areas for developers to go to. So SharePoint add-ins developers, Graph add-ins, or people who use Graph can use the Graph feedback portal here. But if you wanted to make a suggestion for Word or something, there's developer tools, but there's nothing else really. We do have a couple people who are using this. I'm not sure how we're going to handle that situation, but we can't. It doesn't. It also, this feedback portal is a bucket basically for our back end. It's called OCV, One Customer Voice, where everything goes to bug reports, in product, send a smile, send a frown, documentation, feedback, all the different contact types. So this feedback portal is a feedback central for all the different contact types. And we don't have a central place for issues. So early on, there had been a suggestion by many of you, as well as many of our PMs, that we should just continue to keep ideas and suggestions for new APIs and new features, suggestions in GitHub. So we're at this point now that we have the feedback portal is in preview and released. The interim solution that's not working, we need to move off of. And so the problem is, where do we go? Do we send you all to the feedback portal and have difficulty triaging there? Or do we keep it in GitHub? You probably remember I brought this up a couple months ago. I personally feel that we should keep you guys where we're already at, which is in the GitHub repo. We have the feedback process volunteers there daily. So we know that we're meeting our service level agreements and triaging issues as they come in. So some of the pros with the feedback portal is that it is the official Microsoft feedback portal. Sadly for us, we can't integrate with it because it doesn't connect on the back end to our OCV repository. The categories don't map at all, and we're not able to customize. You can upvote but you can't have discussions. It does search for duplications, so that removes one of our other headaches, which is reining in all the duplications. I already mentioned several of the cons. Basically, I don't think we can use this. But then how do we use GitHub? It also has problems too. We end up just stacking up the issues. And it's difficult because we have PMs and engineers in China, India, here in Seattle. The person doing the actual triage has to spend a lot of time trying to figure out who gets the assignment. We can integrate. GitHub now has a connector for ADO, but we would need to find somebody on the team or find somehow to develop that resource, because we're very tight and resource constrained with this effort to volunteer to track down all of our customer feedback. We do have plenty of Power BI reports that we can use, but again, that requires somebody to kind of figure out that aspect of it. Okay, so as I continue talking, I want to just mention right now where we're at is that I have submitted the spec that we changed to GitHub with, all the stuff that a spec requires. And most people that I've talked to individually and groups, including many of you personally, like this decision. However, it's not final. I do have to get sign off on it, although I'm very positive this will happen. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to go back and share my screen. If you have a moment to check out feedback versus GitHub Office.js repo and send your thoughts if you have any on how we could manage this better. Send it to me directly, and please put in your subject Office Add-ins feature suggestion. That way I can sort it and get to it directly. If you have any suggestions that you've currently submitted on the feedback forum, if you have any actually here that you've added, please @ me. My username here is @LindaLou- MSFT. It actually might be, what am I? Yeah. So if you are tracking one of your ideas in this spot, if it migrated over from user voice or if you submitted a new one, please at me so I can make sure that I follow up with you. So have a look at this is the new feedback forum. Imagine you had something you wanted to request. How would you go about it? And please give me your feedback. One of the things I wanted to point out is that here in Office.js, where we do most of our triage or most of the feedback process volunteers work in mostly, we already have quite a few product feature requests. We have 47. Some of them are open, some of them are resolved, some of them have bugs because they're in the backlog. But one of the things we can do if there is a product feature request is to convert the issue to a discussion. This is something SharePoint's doing. This is a new feature in GitHub. If any of you are using it, I'd love to hear it. And what we can do is start having conversations about the feature and kind of dialing it down so the engineers can look at it, and then we can convert it back to an issue and actually add it to the backlog. So this is something that if we do this, we're going to definitely utilize this new GitHub feature of discussions, because we can go back and forth, but we can lock an issue and make sure it gets discussed thoroughly before we bring it back in and add it to our workload. So, and then lastly, I think the last bullet point on the previous slide was if you are interested in being in an official customer survey type user group, let me know. I have other questions about other areas of how we do support some of these areas that you frequent, Stack Overflow, Microsoft Q&A, and some of the other channels that we monitor. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll do my best right now to answer, or you can reach out directly to me. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Linda, for that update. It's very cool to see progress happening in that space.
And I'll have more probably next month.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, let me bring back the slides. I believe Juan is up next.
Yeah, let me share my screen. All right, awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. I mean, I was... This call is a lot of fun. I've been chatting a lot in the chat with everybody. So hello, this is Juan Balmori here. I have an Outlook update for you guys. I want to talk about two things here in the last few minutes of the call. One thing that I wanted to share with you is the Mailbox 1.12 scope defined. So basically, that's the next release of Outlook Add-ins, APIs. And then I want to give you an update. We're getting a lot of questions about the REST decommission up, and I want to make sure that you guys know the latest here, as well as answering a few of your questions, or your many questions, by the way. All right, so Mailbox 1.12, the release of Mailbox 1.12 is imminent. I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of what's coming in that scope. So basically, Mailbox 1.12 is going to be around two big features that we're going to be including in 1.12. The first one is smart alerts. We have been talking about this in many sessions. Actually, a couple of months ago, we had Sam here doing a demo of one example of smart alerts. I'm going to give you more examples here, but smart alerts is the first big item that is included in Mailbox 1.12. And the second one is we're going to have new auto-run events. We have two new compose events. Today, back in Mailbox 1.12, we shipped, the auto-run events that you could actually, run code when a message is composed. But we shipped back then on new compose message or on new appointment organizer. That event only was triggered when you created a brand new email or when you were replying or forwarding a message. But for example, if you started the composition of a message and you closed, your compose experience, you get a draft, email stored in your mailbox. And then the problem with that event is that when you reopen the item again from drafts, the event was not triggered. That's why we call it on new message. Well, we're going to have a couple of events shipped as part of 1.12. that are going to be dealing the draft case, that you can use them to add code when a draft is opened. But evidently, the big feature really is smart alerts. We were able to squeeze a couple of more events here, but smart alerts, for those of you who haven't heard it, It's basically part of event-based also. It's an event that actually gets triggered when a user clicks send on an email or an appointment. This is a very common pattern in very requested pattern in Outlook, because many things happen when people send emails, no? So you want to add some logic to validate content, to verify, that, for example, you're including an agenda in an appointment, that's, properly classifying content. There are millions of scenarios here, no? So we have on message send and on appointment send events. And by the way, this is something that we shipped previously. We're making a few changes. We were not allowing the item send. For some of you know that we shipped a long time ago an item send event, and that we are not allowing add-ins that are implementing that event in the store for many reasons. But the main reason is that the add-in isn't available, then the user cannot send emails. No, so that was a very hard kind of way of blocking the send of an email. And that's why we decided to ship this. It's really an improvement of that feature that you can now split, if you want to handle the event on message send for messages or appointments. And of course, we will never not allow users from sending emails. So if your add-in is unavailable, they will have an option to send it. No. The news here is that the feature is in preview in Windows, and now it's also available in OA. So if you go to Outlook Web, Outlook for the web, you're going to be able to use this feature. And the other good news is that they will be accepted in the store. So just to show you quickly what you can do here, let me show you one more slide here. What's key, you need to modify the manifest of your Outlook add-in to indicate that you will support the message send or an appointment send. And basically, it's the same as the other launch events. You type the name of the event and then the handler that it's going to be called in your code when that event happens. Now, one thing that is different specifically for these two events is that you can have a mode. As you can see, there's another attribute on the XML that you can choose the mode you want to be blocking emails. No, and basically you have three options here. We have prompt user. Prompt user is the scenario where you want to give a recommendation to the user. You're blocking the send of the email because you want to provide a recommendation. And basically what this means is that we are going to provide a send anyway option. So you're going to be able to say, for example, hey, I would recommend you to add, for example, an agenda item. Let me show you a quick demo here of how this works. If I create a new appointment, and let's say that I am sending this blank appointment right here, but when I click on send, my event, it's very fast, but it's going to get triggered and it's going to say, hey, this email is blank. Do you want to add an agenda item? And as you can see, I have two options here. I can click don't send and add the agenda, or I can just send anyway because that's just a recommendation. In this case, this is using the prompt user option, right? And then we have soft block, and soft block, that's the mode you want to use when you want a mandatory change. So it's basically something that it's so important that the user needs to change it that you wouldn't allow them to kind of send the email. So there will not be a send anyway option. It would just be like, go back and fix the email and send it again. So in some scenarios, this makes sense, no? One exception to this is if your add-in is unavailable. For whatever reason, if we cannot reach your add-in, then the user will be able to send anyway. And I want to show you one. This is super important behavior because this is different from how we previously used to work with the old event. So let's say for a second that I have this email right here, and then this demo is actually simulating that the add-in is not reachable. No, so when I click on send, what's going to happen is that we're going to try to run your code, but the add-in is unavailable. So what's going to happen here is that we are going to be showing you this dialog, right? And we're going to give you an acknowledgement that we cannot reach your add-in, and then basically you can choose to send anyway. So that is kind of essential for us to allow add-ins to be shipped to the store. If you are using either prompt user or soft block, your add-in is going to be allowed in the store. There's a third option, which is block, that behaves exactly as the item send event we shipped a long time ago. That it's like, this is mandatory changes, and they are so important that the block of the email, that even if the add-in is not available, it's okay, to not send the email. this is also for some extreme situations that could happen, no? But all right, so that is coming in Mailbox 1.12. The release is imminent again, and you can try today in if you were using these items in preview in Windows. Now you can also do it in OWA. You can try all this as well, right? So that's going to be the Mailbox 1.12 scope, and we are going to give you more updates of the release very soon. Now let's go switch gears here to the decommission Outlook, the REST API decommission that we're going to have. No, the context here for all of the. I've been talking about this a lot in the last months. I'm going to give you updates every time I can. But basically, for those of you who don't know, back in February, we were sharing that in November 30, 2022, the REST API team, the guys who own the Outlook REST endpoint, it's going to be decommissioned, right? So this impacts both Exchange Online and Exchange On-Prem as well, if you are in a hybrid environment. So you are in a mixture of on-prem and the cloud as well. 100% on-prem, it's not using REST, so it doesn't have REST services, no? The scenarios impacted, I'm putting here a code snippet. So if you have a code snippet that looks like this, well, basically when you are creating, you're using the REST URL property, and you're particularly using the V2 API endpoint, that's basically, it's going to stop working eventually, So that is super important. Obviously, we want people to be moving to the Graph API, So the latest here is that we have good news to share. We already told you months ago that we're going to be granting exceptions to add-ins because right now we don't have a good story to be moving to the Graph, and that basically means that until Office 2019, which is basically when we ship after Office 2019, we ship the support for single sign-on. So the idea is that all Outlook add-ins who are using the REST API, we're going to be granted an exception to keep using the REST API until end of extended support of 2019, which basically means end of around October 14th of 2025, right? And then the news here is that right now we are working with the REST team and actually found a way to identify the traffic that is coming from Outlook add-ins. So this is we're currently testing it. Remember that we were creating this allow list of app IDs that we were going to be allowing to get exceptions. Well, now the approach has changed a little bit, and basically what we're trying to do here is to automatically detect the traffic coming from Outlook add-ins. And if that's the case, then all add-ins are going to be allowed even after the November decommission date until end of support of 2019. So basically, you'll have from now until 2025, to move your add-in to the Graph, and we're going to be providing more APIs so that that's simpler. Right now, if you submit it, back in February, I was submitting this form that you can use to actually go and send us your details about your add-ins in case you want to validate, or if you want to add your add-in, your add ID to our list. If you have used this form, we have contacted everybody who has sent so far. I have contacted personally all the persons who have submitted this case. And I actually asking for some fiddler traces on calling the REST APIs. So if you want to participate in the validation, please make sure to answer this survey. If you already did it and I already contacted you, it's no need to send it again. But if this is news to you, please send me, communicate with me through this form, and then I will contact you and verify that you are covered. And then, well, obviously the advice here is move to the Graph. The Graph is going to be the future eventually. So please share any issues you find. Either if it's a Graph scope, we haven't been identifying any scope issues, which means that basically everything that you have in the REST endpoint is available in the Graph API. And if you also have non-functional issues, like for example, if the perf is not good enough or significantly slower than REST, we want to know about it. So let's make sure to contact our team and chat about it. All right. So that's the news. So I think it's good news for everybody. The summary in a nutshell is that we're going to grant exceptions for everybody until October 14, 2025. So that's good. Now, many of you are sending a lot of questions. So David, I'm adding here some of those questions. I'm using a bit of the time here. Basically, quickly is that when the Outlook REST API is decommissioned, Where will be the programmatic way to confirm that the add-in, okay. So people are asking, how are they going to be able to check, if the REST API is no longer available? And the answer to this question is that there's an API that you need to call. If you look at my previous slide here, you get a get callback token. This is the API that you need to use in order to get a REST API compatible token. One of the options that is accepted by this API is REST equals true. That's what makes the API to return a token that is going to be compatible with the REST API endpoint. So basically, if you're using this syntax and you're requesting a REST token, we're going to fail that call. So this call is not going to be, you're no longer going to be able to obtain that token and hence call the endpoint, right? That's going to be the way to check it. So Office context mailbox.rest URL most probably is going to be an empty property. Remember that every time you see a property in Office.js, it means that was initialized when you loaded the item. So it's going to be initialized as empty as well, right? Right, so I answered that question. Solution for mobile. Mobile, we have the problem because in mobile, we don't have a very good alternative for the REST APIs because you cannot call EWS. So the recommendation that we have been giving for folks who have Outlook add-ins in mobile is to basically move the server calls to a server, and then from the server, communicate with the graph. That is in general the approach, no? Right now we don't have a good answer on get callback token, so we have some more time to offer a solution here. My team is going to be working on trying to get an alternative to get callback token. So that you can at least use EWS, no? But again, here the workaround, unfortunately, is going to be move to the server and from the server make the call. Examples on how to use the Outlook add-ins as an alternative of REST. Yes, of course we haven't yet have a sample for this, but the idea is that we're going to have a sample showing, the server-side approach that I was sharing with you. More mobile questions. How can we get documentation on guidance to update mobile add-ins that work post? Well, we're going to have the documentation and guidance. I already talked about this a little bit. Get access token for the graph isn't available. Yes, so that's why we are advising people to move, to the server those calls while we create a more creative solution on the clients, right? Okay. The get item and get attachment, these are APIs that we're planning to also add in mobile. So maybe with the JavaScript directly, you're going to be able to fix this. And finally, using resting on-prem, there's somebody that is saying that, Exchange 2016, yes. So REST APIs are available in on-prem if you're in a hybrid configuration. So if you're in a hybrid configuration, the same applies, it's going to be decommissioned on November 22nd this year. And I think those are all the questions that I have. I will be giving more updates every month on this. So if you have additional questions, please let us know, send your questions, and hopefully we can answer them in the next community call. So I think that's it, my content for today, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. It was great to see the update on what's happening with the decommission. Imagine folks will be very happy about that. So let me bring the slide deck back up. So there's a link here, this aka.ms/Word API link will take you to a survey that the Word team put together to help them with prioritizing work that they're doing. It's mainly around Word content controls and fields. So we're looking for your feedback. If you work with Word and the Word APIs, please let us know what you think. The survey is going to be up there for a while. So feel free to share it or fill in answers later. If you want to reach out for further discussions, you can also leave your contact info in that form. And we'll share the results of this survey on the next community call. So please check that out. And then moving along, we have our Q&A for today. So in addition to what Juan already covered, some additional questions. Is there a way to stop the mouse cursor icon changing to a loading icon when calling PowerPoint.run in an Office add-in? So this behavior is by design, because the Office.js APIs run on PowerPoint's UI thread. So it's basically indicating to the user that they're blocked until that operation is complete. And if an operation took a bit longer than usual, we'd let them know, oh, they can't do anything right now. But it'd be great to let us know in the chat if there's more about this scenario, if there's, what you're expecting to see there. Definitely reach out to us or create a feature suggestion to let us know more about the scenario if that's something we should look into changing. Next question was about Microsoft Graph when performing a search, preferably using this search queue search text option endpoint. Is it possible to search SharePoint files by their image tags? So this is a good question for the Microsoft Graph team. So I put a link here to their support site, so you can reach out to them and ask them that question. And the next question is there a way to start a web add-in from a Visto add-in? This capability would make a transition from Visto to web much easier to implement, to have a smooth transition from Visto to web as if it was a single add-in. So yeah, migrating the entire add-in from Visto to web in a big bang is not possible since the JS API is lacking some common APIs. And that's true. Yeah, there's not parity today. So it might not always make sense to migrate. So right now, no, there is not this capability to go launch a a web add-in from Visto. There are resources around the scenario, though. You can set up a hybrid scenario where when the Visto add-in is available, like on Windows, that would get used instead of the web add-in. But if you're on the web, you would see the web add-in. And so I put some links to documents on how you can set this up. This is the scenario that we designed for this, so it'd be good. I'd recommend taking a look at these if you haven't. There's also a way you can share code so that your Visto add-in is sharing code with the web add-in. So they're both basically running the same thing, and you can do feature developments that will roll out to both at the same time. And if this isn't working, if there's another scenario we should be looking at here, please let us know. I'll provide a link later on to the suggestions site. And a question on how can we create pre-populated emails from a web add-in hosted by another Office application? For example, if in a Word add-in, I want a button that creates an email with a subject and a body already set and attach the Word document like as a PDF. Something like this was possible with Visto add-ins, but I can't find a solution with the web add-ins. So here, if the goal is you want to attach the currently open document, like your Word document as a PDF, then you can use the Office.document Git Sync API, which there's an option in there to say, give me a PDF version. There's a link to the document for that. There isn't really a direct way to send the email from the Word add-in, but what you can do is use Microsoft Graph to do it. So for example, you could open an Office Dialog API, provide some additional details for like the subject line, for example, and then once it's filled in by the user, you can use the Graph API, the Graph Mail API to construct and send the email. And that's a clickable link there to Microsoft Graph with information about how you can do that. Then a question with Visto, is it possible to create PDF/A versions of Office files? So in our target sector, public sector and governments, using PDF-A is important and required in most cases. How can a PDF-A representation of Office file be created using the JS APIs? So right now, the Office.js APIs only support PDF format. They don't give you PDF/A. So I would say this would be a case to go create a features request for that, describing this scenario. So that's probably something we should take a look at. And there's the link to M365 Dev Suggestions. By the way, that link, if we move to GitHub Issues later on for tracking these, that link will automatically update. So if you use that, you're always going to land in the right place. And then regarding the GitHub issue, so there's this GitHub issue about sharing Excel workbooks, depending on add-ins can cause irrecoverable corruption. This also relates to Open Excel functionality. There's no workaround. So basically what's happening is if you create an Excel spreadsheet and you embed your add-in into it, and then that's sent to a user who doesn't have that add-in installed, they're not getting prompted to install the add-in. And then they could go through the spreadsheet and potentially can corrupt things because the add-in isn't involved in the data handling, like custom functions, for example. So in this case, we submitted the idea on June 1st, but haven't received upvotes or responses, and we're informed the PM will consider it the quarterly planning. What are the dates of the next quarterly planning meetings? Why do critical breaking issues need to be posted on ideas forum? When can we expect to see a response from Microsoft? So yeah, this has clearly been frustrating, and we apologize for that, for the time it's taken to investigate this issue. There is discussion going on in the team around the scenario, and there's some nuance in terms of how an add-in gets activated when it's embedded like this. So right now we're validating the different scenarios in terms of what works, what doesn't, what are the workarounds, and we'll be following up on the GitHub issue this week. So please stay tuned there. There were a couple Outlook questions that came in that I don't know that we got to, so I put them in here just to know, hey, acknowledge we have these, and we'll follow up in the blog post after the call to be sure we have answers for these. And then just to wrap things up, if you're new to Office add-ins, we have documentation and quick starts that you can go look at. We also have Script Lab, which allows you to try out snippet samples in an Office host without necessarily having to set up a dev environment. Samples, the Microsoft 365 Developer Program, which gives you a free tenant for developing and testing. I highly recommend that. You can also use Office scripts for automating, and so there's a link to the docs for that. And if you want to engage with a team, this is our latest information here, some AKA links. So if you have technical questions, you can go to aka.ms/office-add-ins-dev-questions, and there's a couple of tags listed there. You can also go to stackoverflow.com and ask there. We monitor both locations. And for any product bugs, please let us know on the Office.js repo in Office Dev, and we'll take a look at those there. There's feature requests and ideas. Use the aka.ms/M365 Dev-Suggestions, and again, we'll update that link if and when it moves to GitHub. And you can always send a smile or frown from inside Office itself. This isn't the only developer community call out there. There's also the All Up Microsoft 365 platform call and additional ones around adaptive cards, Microsoft Identity Platform, and so on. So if you're interested in any of these areas, please click on these links and go check them out. You can see a list of all the calls and assets at aka.ms/M365PNP. Finally, just thanks everybody for attending the call. Again, it'll be available on the Microsoft 365 Community PNP YouTube channel 24 hours later. There's the link there for that. You can also follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or at M365PNP. The next call will be September 14th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. There's a link there for that. I worked to get the agenda out about a week ahead of the call. That's at the aka.ms/office add-ins agenda. And if you have any questions that you'd like to see answered on the next call, please let us know at aka.ms/office add-ins form, and we'll work to get those answered. So once again, thanks everyone. We will see you on the next call.